start the meeting. All those in agreement? Hands, aye. Those are online, let me see your hands. Any nays? No nays, the ayes have it. This meeting is officially started. Before we officially start, I'd like to make announcement that this meeting will now be recorded
And streamlined.
and streamed live on our social network, Facebook, and
The PAB.
the PAB's Facebook page. So again, this meeting will be recorded and streamed live on the PAB's Facebook page. All right, we are officially started. That was first thing on the agenda, or second thing on the agenda, is to approve the February 23rd meeting agenda minutes. We'd like to make a motion to approve those minutes.
Move to approve the minutes. Second, Lex.
We have a second. All those in agreement?
Aye.
No conversation on it? I see our team moving online. All the hands. Any nays? No nays? Ayes have it to approve February 23rd meeting agenda minutes. Next on our agenda tonight is the staff report. Will be given to us by Fatimata.
Yes. Hear me okay? Can you guys over there hear me on Teams? Good? Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you, Bishop. All right, so since the last meeting, I'll start with what we're doing now. We got some help from some tech support to ensure that we're able to not just record these meetings, or have them stream onto the PAB Facebook page itself. So what would be good for those who have Facebook accounts to go to the PAB page and share it out to their pages and to other groups to make sure that the public is aware of what's happening. And this goes directly to that we want to make sure that the public is in the know for everything that we're doing, and taking a big step towards that. Additionally, to report that we are still in the process looking for special counsel for the PAB. Still working on it. I've had different conversations with the county attorney, who per legislation is required to. Okay, so Rob says it's cutting out. Okay, I don't know. He said the sound is cutting out.
Cutting out.
Yeah.
Is it back up?
Here?
Can Chris, Rudy, Kate, can you help here?
Can you all hear me? Fine?
Yeah, I think if the PAB is, as long as the board can hear.
Yeah, maybe it's.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
If it's going to-
Okay. All right. So I've had conversations with, as an update, county attorney to ensure that the PAB has their own counsel. It's still in the process, and still looking for someone that the county attorney can retain for the PAB. So the legislation requires that the county attorney finds someone, brings them in front of the county council, and the county council approves that individual to then be special counsel for both the PAB and the ACC. So we're in the process of doing that. And as it stands right now, we have everything up and running with our social media. Everything is set and ready to go. And I'm still encouraging everyone who has any access to social media to please go ahead and check it out, like it, share it. The more audience we have in it, the better it is for us to get it out. And as you can see, we now have our own logo.
So
The PAB has its logo.
Yeah, the logo, yes.
The PAB has its own logo, so we are still working on the graphic.
that we will be using moving forward, and we can just change it up to make sure that we get the message out to the public. We have the location for the listening session at the White Oak Rec Center. I've sent invite to all the council members. We only had 2 who responded to say that they will be present. So we're still waiting for them. We also have the location for the quarterly meeting with the chiefs for March the 30th. And they've all responded. Either will be there or they'll be sending their deputies. And we also made a request for regulations from the different jurisdictions, law enforcement agencies. And majority of them, probably 90% of them, have already provided the information, and we're populating a document that you can all access for that, if you know.
Regulations refer.
So I made a request for regulations. It's ready for the ACC, but I wanted to make sure that as PAB, you also have access to that information, which is just law enforcement regs, like the rules and things like that, so that you can just have something. If you want to look up some information and you have a question, you can go to that jurisdiction. So I've made some requests for the ACC, but I think it will be useful for the PAB. So, so I'm going to also work on a separate document just for PAB that you can access if you know, in your work, if you know policies and whatnot, you can go and look at these different jurisdictions to see what they have. So that's the bare minimum. There are a lot of moving parts going on, but I think you have bigger things to talk about right now. Because so that's fine.
Thank you, Martha. A quick question, just the location again for the quarterly chiefs meeting. I know we have the date. The location, can we have a location yet for them?
The executive office building, the auditorium is the space for the quarterly chiefs meeting.
That's
So it'll be in
101.
Rockville, Maryland.
101.
101 Monroe Street.
Yeah.
It's on the lobby level of the building.
Carlene's is saying the same thing, that it's hard to hear. I don't know, because they can hear.
But I think what we'll do is, as long as the PAB can hear it, and that the other one keeps trying to read it every time we do next door.
Is there going to be a transcript of the recording since it is being recorded?
There's a transcript.
Okay, so they will be able to see
Yeah.
the.
I think we just move on. We don't want to go down that rabbit hole very quickly. We got a lot we got to cover.
Right, but then
But we just let them know that if you can't hear, if it's going in and out right now, this meeting is being recorded and also streamed live on the PAB Facebook page. Please, if you have Facebook, go and pull up the page, and maybe you can hear it there as well. But you will be able to go back into our SharePoint PAB site and go over this meeting, because the recording can be followed there after that.
And
I think
very quickly, just so people know, if you go to the Facebook page, because I went on the Facebook page from my own personal page, you can actually hear everything. If you click on the Facebook page, the live that's going on, you can hear clearly what we're talking about right now.
Mr. Walker, yeah, I just wanted to ask Pat Manta if regarding special counsel. I know that the search is ongoing, and you stated that the county attorney has looked at several candidates and decided against several.
I think what we want to do.
Yeah, I know. Is it inappropriate for me to ask her regarding this back and forth right now?
No. Just leave it. I think what we need to do is let's go through the steps, because that's a part of our unfinished business. Yeah, all right, and then we take the question for that, because I want to get past this, because we got a lot we want to do, but that is an important question. But let's get to the number 4 and number 5. Number 5 bullet point will bring us to that point where we can discuss that question in reference to the special counsel. We just wanted the reports, the staff report read, which we got it, and then we want to give this next 2 to 3 minutes for the public comment before we move to the unfinished business, and then the first point will be you, Alicia, addressing in your concern in reference to that. Once we get to that bullet point of the special counsel, I do want to go back unless the board wants to skip past these agenda bullet points and go to that now.
I suggest we go through the agenda.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you again, Michael, for that report. Number 4 is we have about 2 or 3 minutes. I don't know if you pulled something down for public comments. I know that is a part of our agenda now. Was there 1 or 2 questions that we pulled down to address? I know that was what we agreed upon and how it would happen. If we did not,
For public, did you receive the question?
Nothing has come through from the website as of
I
yet.
see.
okay.
But
So,
someone can ask from there.
well, let's, I'm sorry, Chris, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Bishop Walker. I just wanted to get clarification. I thought it was understood that the board wanted to continue with the complaint report inside of the staff report. So I was just wondering, is that going to be included in today's meeting?
One more time, Chris, please repeat the question. Make sure I heard you right.
So based on email traffic between the board, it was my understanding that we had made clear that we wanted to continue with the complaint report. So update on complaints that we had accepted from the public and referred to law enforcement agencies. And I didn't hear that in the staff report. So I'm just making sure that that's included in today's meeting.
I believe that is Chris, and if anyone on the PAB could chime in.
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Yeah.
I think, Chris, at least procedurally, I think one thing that we need to ensure we do is approve the agenda for this meeting as well. And so if we're going to go that route and incorporate something that is not currently in the agenda, we would want to vote on it. And a majority of us would need to vote affirmatively to change the agenda.
Okay. Was it removed from the agenda? I'm confused because it's normally been in the agenda, so I'm just kind of confused.
Okay, all right. Hold on for a minute, Chris. We'll try to work this out.
Yeah, I mean,
Chair recognizes Ken.
we might not have data today, but in the past, we've received those complaints as part of the staff report. And so I don't think the agenda necessarily needs to be revised. But Mata, do you have that information about the number of complaints received?
Okay. So, not at my fingertips, but, okay, so I will say this because it needs to be put out. In reviewing of the legislation as it's written now.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
So the board made a determination that it wanted to receive these complaints and report them. So I think we have a lot to cover today, as the chairman indicated. So if we could just get that information when it's communicated, that would be helpful.
Okay,
Yeah, I think what we want to do, and that's correct. I think at the board's request, we do want to first make sure that the request is addressed, because this is how the board has been operating and functioning from its beginning and its establishment, getting those reports, and those reports were provided to us. So I think at this point, we want to continue that process until any clarification as far as interpretation is made at a later time.
can I very quickly, I think so we can move on to the next thing. So as staff here with the PAB, my role is to ensure that what the legislation mandates for the PAB is complied with and done within the four corners of the ledge. And you're right, I wasn't a legislation. I wasn't, of course, here at the beginning, right? So, but in reviewing of the legislation as it's written, the section of the legislation that talks about the law enforcement providing the list of complaints is to be provided to the administrative charging committee, not the police accountability board. And that is why, in reviewing that, for me, in compliance with what is written in that legislation, is why I did not include that in my staff report. Now, a conversation can be had in reviewing of the legislation, because I think it's I forget the numbers. But when you go to that section of it, it's speaking to the law enforcement responsibility to the ACC and providing that list on a monthly basis to the ACC, not to the PAB. And that's why I did not include it in my report. And
there. All right, the chair recognizes it, please.
But I do want to point out, it's something that was sent by the co-chair to all of us, as well as Chris. They sent the text regarding the MPAA bill, law. And in that, it stated that the PAB, within our purview is to receive complaints of police conduct filed by members of the public. So we are to receive those complaints. Now, so I understand what you're stating about the actual processing or adjudication of the complaints is under the purview of the ACC, but the PAB still has the authority to receive, and it has been put in place to receive the complaints, and then we forward those, as the law states, we forward those on to the LEA. So
The chair
co-chair.
recognizes Ken.
Yeah, I think that if any member of the board wants to make a motion that we revisit the policy, we should put that on the agenda of a future meeting. But our reading of the statute as established early on, respectfully, is not consistent with yours.
Anyone else?
so to
Anyone
resolve,
else?
to
So the
resolve
motion,
everything,
I think.
Sure. Yeah.
to resolve everything, what I'll do is I'll publicly publish the legislation itself, so you can see it in black and white. Because I'm not doing any interpretation. That's not my role. No, I'm not.
Well, I think
So
what we're
I'll
saying,
do
I
that.
think what we're saying here,
Yeah.
I think what we're saying here is that we're in a situation of interpretation. Some are reading and getting this interpretation. Excuse me, and what we have read from the beginning and got interpretation, which is that the PAB, based on the legislation, is to receive these complaints of misconduct filed by the members of the public, review the matters, the review of the matters or the outcomes. Of course, disciplinary matters is considered by, of course, the ACC. But it says here that the board, the PAB, is allowed to get these complaints and then either pass them over to ELA. That's the interpretation that we're getting mostly, and that we have been conducting the PAB by. Now, the complaints and the reports, I'm assuming, are two different issues now, because it's a complaint until it passes over to the ACC. When it goes to the ACC, now it's a report because it's involving starting its first initial adjudication and investigation. So I think those are the two different contexts and matters of it. So as long as it's a complaint, it's in the PAB purview to be able to have and then pass on. But once it's passed on, then it becomes the ACC and a report now, because we're starting investigation. So I think for now, what we would like to suggest, and I've talked with the co-chair to kind of bring this up, is maybe on this specific context of interpretation, maybe we can have somewhat of a motion to continue how we are, table this until we have a independent legislator to help us understand exactly what the real interpretation of this is. Because based on the way this reads, I do, and how we've conducted that, the PAB should have should know the record of these complaints. They should come in.
It should come past there.
Again, the chair recognizes.
I just like, I suggest that the board focus on our agenda tonight and our upcoming meetings. I don't need the question of, our receipt of these number of complaints to be, subject to debate, and I wouldn't seek out any further legal interpretation of this. We're comfortable with our viewpoint.
I say make a motion.
And I move that we table discussion of the question of complaints and receive the reports, number of complaints received at every committee meeting going forward.
That's the motion.
Seconded.
We got a second. Any other comment? All those in agreement with Ken's motion? In continuation of how we live, we have any nays on that? No nays? There it is. All right. So let's continue with tonight's agenda, unless there's any questions on any of our scribers. No question. All right. Unfinished business. Since there was no recorded or taken down comments made to address here in this meeting tonight, we'll move here. The review of the proposed General Assembly legislation. The board recognizes, Chris, did you hear me on the next agenda? I'm sorry. We recognize you at this point.
Thank you, Bishop. So the two main bills I thought would be useful to discuss were SB 285 and SB 409. And particular, most interest, I think, to the board should be SB 285 because it touches on some things Alicia has brought up. It would give local PABs the ability to conduct investigations themselves. So instead of complaints being referred to law enforcement agencies for investigation, the PAB itself would conduct an investigation concurrently with the law enforcement agency. So it would be kind of like a parallel process. I'm very supportive of this bill. I don't know the status of it or if it has much support in the legislature, but I think to further the independence of the board, I think it's a good idea, so I'd welcome comment from the rest of the board to hear your thoughts.
Chair recognizes Alicia.
And within that same thread of thought, we do need our own independent counsel as we venture into looking at possibly having our own investigatory powers. We at least need our own independent special counsel, and for it to come from the county attorney and they're vetting our special counsel, I find that problematic. I was told by Pat Mata that it was in the MPAA, but I would like the PAB to consider, make a motion, I guess, perhaps that we consider looking at vetting our own outside independent counsel to advise us on matters.
Floor's
Any
open on
thoughts?
that.
Any
Floor's
discussion?
open on that thought.
The alternative is for the county attorney, for us to wait until the county attorney has decided that the legal counsel he or she finds best for us is what we go with. And to me, that could present a possible conflict of interest, particularly since the county attorney works with the Montgomery County Police Department directly. So we thought that's fine either way. I mean, but I'm just saying we should. Any thoughts on that?
It's a valid point. I'm not coming up with an off-the-cuff solution or proposal at this time to address it, given the structure and perhaps in the future making sure that we have some types of checks and balances and limits on communications internally within that department. I just don't know if we have the flexibility to take another route, but I definitely see the point.
I don't know either, but it seems to me, I think we did want to be advised as to whether and how, what investigatory powers for the PAB would look like. And I don't know if we're going to be able to accomplish that, waiting on the county attorney.
But I would suggest maybe, your hands are tied with the legislation, right? But you can always communicate your desires and your necessities as to what you feel you need in order to comply with your mandate and get the job done properly. And the need that you have for your outside counsel and what you're looking for. And, if frustration is there as expressed, then I would suggest you can always communicate that to them, to the county attorney, and say the council, whatever, in writing, or even request an audience with maybe some of them.
And I'll just state here, we received communication from the Montgomery County Police Department, county attorney from the Montgomery County Police Department regarding the scope of the PAB's discretion. In my opinion, that's a conflict of interest. And they're, they're therefore coming back to the need for independent legal counsel for us that is separate and apart from Montgomery County Police Department. So that's all I wanted to say.
Right, no, and it's a very, very, very important and valid point. So I think now the question is, from that point, how do we move from there?
Right.
What is the destination? We do understand the importance that we should have our own independent counsel. That is very important for us to facilitate and navigate, our responsibilities as a board. So, because the PAB, and we're speaking of the PAB tonight, the PAB is an independent, self-governed board. We create our own policies, our own agendas on, and we're not managed. We're not led by, managed by, or controlled by any of the executive branch or any other outside entity, whatever they are. We have our own anonymity. We are our own self-governed board where we are writing our own policies, setting our own agendas on how to conduct those policies. So that's clear and that's important. And that's why we then need to ask all these brains that are here at the table with me and online from that valid point that Alicia just voiced, then how do we want to move from there? Do we want to move from there to continue to express or initially express to the county council that it is imperative that we have either a hands-on with how this independent counsel is chosen for us, and that it is something that is of high importance to happen now, or because it's a valid point, and we just can't lay this down and not figure out what do we want to do from this valid point is what I'm asking.
My thoughts are this. We know we want to have the investigative power. We believe it's important to address the complaints that are coming in. Therefore, we should make it a priority to the council in written form, and then also request an audience if required to discuss why and how we should have an individual that we're involved in the selection of.
Something to add for me is I am certainly with you all in terms of the need for an independent counsel. I am not quite there on the need for investigatory power for the PAB. And the reason is because I think there's an element of checks and balances that we have to take into consideration. The ACC's role is to review the investigation conducted by the law enforcement agency and determine and make a determination based on that. I think something similar could be said. If the law enforcement agency is investigating and for concluding their own investigation, I think the same could be said of the PAB that investigates. And again, I feel like there's a duplicative effort there with the ACC, as well as I think the potential for a lack of checks and balances. So I'm just pointing my opinion out there in terms of the legal counsel. I absolutely agree. There must be an independent legal counsel. We want to trust the advice that we're getting. It is advice. To the chair's point, this is an autonomous body, but I'm not quite sure there with regards to the potential for investigatory power for the PAB specifically.
Yeah, recognize, Co-Chair.
So my thought on the subject of investigative power is that the PAB has inherent power to investigate. It just doesn't have the power to compel any particular entities to respond, but that we do have the power to inquire, like on the letter that Chris and I are working on regarding the status of the complaint process. And we do have the ability to post our inquiries and post our responses and post non-responses and try to elicit information that way. So it won't necessarily be a conflict with the ACC, but as we stretch out a bit, we could do it that way. Since we do lack subpoena power or compulsory interview power to make people give us things.
But the ACC does have that.
The ACC does have that power, which is why, again, let me voice, because I wanted to hear from everyone first. Before I even say anything, but let me make sure I hear from Kate and Rudy on this particular subject before I make my comment on it. Rudy or Kate, anything?
Yeah, I think I tend to agree that with George, that I feel like I want to make sure that we are not losing sight of the things that we can do that nobody else can do, and that the PAB's role of reviewing from a kind of bird's eye view lost. There's a lot to do for that, and I'm a little bit afraid that if we start to wade into doing the investigations in the first instance, we are sort of losing a little bit of that other role that I think is really important. And then on the question of independent counsel, I was wondering, are there other boards that have independent counsel? Like, is there a mechanism for that, for them to get paid? And just logistically, I wondered if anybody knew if there are some boards where they have outside counsel like that.
From what I've gathered, I've talked to a few of the boards. We are further along the path. Most of them are still trying to get their sea legs to understand what direction they are taking. The only one that could conceivably maybe Baltimore County, I believe they've established that board and have individual place. Bishop?
I don't think the county of Baltimore has an independent counsel yet. And they're still kind of behind us in the county. Us meaning the PAB here in Montgomery County. So we're really setting the pace here, if you will.
So just to clarify, Montgomery County is it's a little bit more rare as far as what we're doing. I know that I've observed some public meetings from other counties, and the attorney present is from the county. They're not independent counsel. They're not separate from, and they're physically at the meeting and advising them at the meeting. So I've watched some.
Oh, can I? Oh, hold on. I'm sorry, Michelle. We didn't hear from Rudy yet. I didn't know if Rudy had a thought on it before.
I do. At this moment in time, I'm not opposed to the PAB having that investigative power in cases of misconduct. Because for me as a body, I think, it wouldn't, I don't see it as posing any harms, especially in the event that and this is not to express any sort of distrust on those entities that can already investigate, but in the event that there is, I don't know, maybe red tape, we have the capacity to bypass that because it is a power, that is inherent to our board. So I'm not opposed to, supporting a mandate that would give us that investigative capacity.
I want to say that, in my opinion, I am with the comment and statement, very point made about the independent counsel. I think that's very imperative, very important for us to be able to have in place as quick as possible to be able to function in our capacity to fulfill our responsibility to the public, and keep our anonymous autonomy. Thank you. And I'm not so much with the investigational part of it because as an ACC member, I can kind of see how that would begin to overlap into what we do and cause more of a bumping of heads and unnecessary conditions. So I'm not really with that part of it. So what I would like to do, because we do have a lot more on.
I just have one.
On the thing you made, and I know you do, but here's what I would like to do with your point. Because there's not much more we can do with this conversation here today. So what I would like to do is this part of the conversation in reference to either make a motion that we want to write something to put to the council to inquire what we can do in this process about independent counsel, but table this part about the investigatory ability. We can table that until another time, but to make a motion tonight about, do we want to put something in communication to the council about our strong desire to kind of put the grease, to the axle in reference to independent counsel. That is my suggestion to make a motion on that. So I guess what I would do, if we had the parliamentarian here to make sure that I'm doing it right, is to make a motion to table the investigatory part of this conversation to a later time, and then decide on making a motion at the same, if it can be at the same motion, to how would we want to communicate to the council in reference to independent counsel.
No, I'm sorry. Okay, I misheard what you said. Then I thought you said, can we move forward with asking council for giving us us going full ahead and getting our own independent counsel. That's what I thought I heard you say. But regarding the investigatory powers, I've heard from you, we want to table that for a later time. But regarding independent counsel, yes, we need that as soon as possible.
Well, let's make two motions, I would suggest. One, I can get this started, I guess. I'll make a motion to table a discussion on the investigatory power discussion for the PAB to a later date.
I second that. Oh, can I second?
I think so.
Oh, and can anyone else want to say?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Okay.
Any nays?
Any against? Yeah.
Okay.
All right, and then we can, I guess, make a motion and decide on the path forward for the independent counsel part.
And if we want to move forward with obtaining and vetting our own independent counsel,
Well, see,
not waiting on the county attorney.
well, see, now that you would have to address a lot more, because now that's a lot of time involvement. That's a lot of time involvement for the board, because that means every meeting, every interview,
I have a suggestion, perhaps, open for your guys' thoughts, but if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, you were mentioning that these candidates were voted against for reasons unknown to us, at least. Would it be possible to obtain some clarification as to the criteria that's being used in their evaluation?
So why they were.
Right, so, yeah, as far as I know.
Okay,
I think
that's good enough for me.
I will double check.
I would say-
I don't wanna say yes
I
for
see
sure,
where you're going.
but
Yeah.
I will double check
In
on
that
that.
case,
I see. you.
allow me to make a motion
There you
to
But before you make a motion,
go for it.
for clarity's sake, there's a legislation that says the county attorney retains the special counsel, presents it to the county council, and the county council votes on that individual. So, the PAB can request to the county attorney and the county council to be part of the process. But you would, unless there's a change in legislation.
Yeah, I understand this is not a legal requirement,
Right.
but what I'm trying to get at is a request for information. I think, so
Then let's start there.
I think that's a good first step
Yes,
for
sir.
us to try to better understand what the decision-making process has been. So that would be my motion. So I'll make a motion to request county council, I suppose, additional information or clarification.
County attorney.
County attorney, thank you. As it relates to the criteria being used for evaluating special counsel to the PA.
I like to second that motion. All those in agreement to that motion? I see hands. Any other further conversation? Any nays? No nays? The ayes have it. All right, so we'll make that request. I think in that request, we will stick with our official inquiry writers. I think that falls into the hand of. Okay, the co-chair, he's not looking at me, but.
I have no objection, but, could this be, initially informal inquiry made by
Absolutely,
staff?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, by staff.
An informal inquiry?
Just informal inquiry, then of course we'll ask by Martin just to make an informal inquiry by staff to give us what those criteria are.
Yeah.
So we can look into that. All right, done. Chris, before I move on, just want to make sure in reference to the Sierra Bravo, I'm sorry. Sorry. SB 285 and SB 49, that you were your points addressed adequately, and Chris?
Yeah, I think we tabled the discussion, so I'm fine with further discussion later on.
Roger that. All right, next point is the public listening session format logistics, which is very important of how we want that to look like, because that is coming up on the 30th.
23rd.
I'm sorry, 23rd. Why am I saying the 30th?
Because that's according to chief.
That's right.
It's
So
just something.
I think I know what I'm going with. After the 30th. After. Okay. Let's see, logistics, how we want to work this out to make it look, what this look like, for how we want that meeting ran, and, with our public, and giving them opportunity to come to this meeting and express. I know we had talked about creating a page where they can go on and post.
Re-register.
And register and place their questions, and then we could determine so many questions from that page. Is that still where we are with that? And is that page?
So technically, the comment form is on your main homepage right now. It's been up since last week-ish or right after the March 9th meeting. If you don't receive anything there, though, just how will you continue to flow if you don't get any pre-registration, basically?
Okay,
Because right now you haven't received any comments yet through that vessel.
Is there a pre-registration mechanism currently operating for this meeting?
Once
Oh.
that,
Not yet, until we get our Zoom link. It's gonna be the way to have pre-registration. For people to,
We'll be able to share that in advance.
yes, that's the goal. The goal is to create that. So we're still working on that part.
Sure.
Once that is done,
That's upcoming.
that's gonna be a registration link. That's gonna be shared ahead of time. If you're registered, they're gonna, and if they will attend the meeting. And they usually, you can create a section that says comments, and then you can comment if you want.
Where can we anticipate with respect to that?
I wish I could tell you, unfortunately, that is not in my control. That is, that's with the governmental apparatus. We can only use county or governmental forms for our meetings. If not, I would have just used my Zoom link a long time ago. But
So, I'm sorry, no, Greg, you were finishing.
So from that perspective, we know these government platforms,
Yes.
what platforms are readily available that we can utilize through county
for registration fee,
for registration and government such, because I make the assumption, the platform that they register on will also be the platform that they connect through.
so right now, I don't think Teams has the ability to register. Teams is what's being used right now to do these meetings. So we can create a different registration link that's not the Teams link that we're using this person. But we can probably create something where you can register and, but then you have to have the manpower to then send them right. Zoom is the most seamless because it automatically sends.
So the question that is still an outstanding good question posed by Lindsay then is if we have no one have registered and then posted a comment, how then do we want to proceed with getting comments in order to make this a legitimate public listening session? So that's the question we still did, what would that look like? I think we need to have that in place.
And I was gonna ask that one. Where is this information being shared? And then you stated in so many different ways that we're doing it. Facebook?
Right, because you're talking about the regular meeting, or you're talking about the 23rd?
No, we're talking about the 23rd, right?
Yeah.
It's my 23rd,
I'm
okay,
saying,
all right, okay,
okay, but all of this has been shared with, right?
right, so, we've sent the email to the council side, asking them to attend and to share. We have someone who's working on graphic, but for now, I'm in the process of creating a save the date graphic until I get something permanent from the county that we can use. Sort of like if you go to the Facebook page right now, you see a graphic of today's meeting. So I will more than likely create something like that I just did, just so the information can go out, to tell people where it is. We don't yet have the Zoom link. I'm still working on that,
But people know, I guess what I'm saying is people know about. Is it I'm sorry, but I would like to, I'm not too knowledgeable in this. The PSA, is that possible? Anything on I've heard the PAC do things like that. They have a PSA, they, on the radio or something, or like.
I guess we can.
Here's the thing, I think that we need to kind of fine tune and focus in reference to the logistics of it and the formatting of it is. We're calling this session, we call this a public listening session. And as of today, there are no comments that we have to pull from to address our public's concern, right? We're still trying to set up the Zoom, which will allow them to be able to register and then make those comments for us to pull from, then address in that public meeting. Right? I don't think it's an issue of publicizing that we're having the meeting. I think it's an issue of where are the comments that will make this a legitimate listening meeting? Because if you don't have the comments, it's not a listening meeting because it's just us talking amongst ourselves, right? If I'm tracking this right? Okay, so if that's the case, but again, goes back to the question that was posed, is if we don't have, let's say, just for the sake of making our agenda perfect, if there's such thing as a perfect agenda, is how then do we want to be able to pull comments down in that meeting to address it so our public can feel like we're here listening to them and hearing them, if we don't have the Zoom link and set up in time, in other words?
That because I had a thought.
Oh, no, I mean, sorry.
Okay,
I'm sorry, and then after, we'll do Rudy first. Rudy, you first, and then Greg. Rudy.
Thank you, Bishop. I echo your sentiments. I'm actually concerned that we might not draw the appropriate turnout. I think the 23rd is a bit of a quick turnaround, given where we're at now. And I think it'd be prescient to get in touch with community organizations that work with vulnerable populations and have heard the stories and, might be able to, compel them or invite them to come forward and share the complaints. But I'm concerned about the time sensitivity of this. But, would even propose maybe rescheduling the session if we cannot draw, I guess, the appropriate level of input from our vulnerable populations that, this listening session would be for first and foremost.
I'm really going kind of where I was thinking. One, if we don't have a time frame, because it's basically talking a couple weeks. However, when we do have a listening session, I believe it would be appropriate for anyone that is online at that time to go ahead and raise their hand and put the comment at that time period. Make it a limit of 90 seconds to put forward, and then we move on to the next individual. And there's nothing wrong with being free flowing, because oftentimes people just do not register for whatever reasons, but have the ability. And if the 23rd is too soon, then let's make it for, say, the second week of April, which gives, I think, enough time for individuals to become aware, to get notifications up, to get the connections in place, and do it as such.
Okay, let's hold on.
If I may, I just have a possibly a more question about the current status of that. Because I agree with Rudy in that we want to maximize the turnout here. But I think that if the session has been advertised and publicized and it's out there, I don't think we go with rescheduling, even if we don't get what would be appropriate, number. I think we have to start somewhere. And this is an important matter, I think, for all of us. So if we get 2 people, and those are the 2 people that show up and they have concerns about police accountability, then I think we should be there to listen. And I think that to address Bishop Walker's point earlier, I think what we want to try to do, my opinion would be to focus on the logistics of that, specifically, how much time per person, what are their specific, topics that could spur conversation, not to lead anyone necessarily, but again, I think that if we made the effort to sort of come to a date and time, I think we'll keep that and let the cards fall where they fall.
And I want to say something on that, but Chuck, want to make sure we're hearing from you as well in reference to the 23rd, is what we're talking about, what the logistics would look like. Right now, we have no registered persons or comments.
Okay.
In reference to make this a listening session. So the question that was posed is then what alternative can we put in place logistically to say, okay, all right, we don't have any registered person, but we're going forward with the meeting because I do agree that we should go forward with the 23rd. It should not be a rescheduling issue. And if 2 people show up, then let those 2 people be the voices. you know, that we want to hear from, because that's what we're here to do. We're trying to establish a mutual reciprocal communication. You know, we've heard from law enforcement, now we want to hear from our community.
Yeah.
So before I move on, Chuck, I wanted to make sure that you have any thought on that.
Thank you for that. Based on what you just laid out, the question that I have no one was registered yet. What would be the harm in rescheduling so that we can get everything right?
Well, I don't, in my opinion, I mean, unless someone else want to address that first, I'll do that. The question is from Chuck, what would be the harm if we have no one registered yet with rescheduling? So before I give an answer, does anyone else want to share their thought on that? We have Alicia first, and then I see Rudy, since he's online, and then the co-chair.
Yeah, to Rudy's point, and I guess tangentially, but, you know, if I understand that Fatma's done a great job of getting the word out. Is it possible that we target heads of these very concerned groups that have been following us? They really have, whether they've come to the meetings or not, they've been following us. YPP, Young People for Progress, SSJC, SJCPA. Would it be at all useful to directly send out a letter asking them, hey, look, we want to hear from you. Can you please send a representative? Can you please come? Because those entities represent thousands of members in the county.
Well, you know, the question that you're asking is again on us to set that logistic, and that's what we're trying to do now. We can determine that.
Okay, well, so I'm saying,
we can determine how we want that to look on the program.
well, then I'm putting that out there. I think that's
what I'm asking. We need to determine how we want it to look. We want to say, hey, this is on the best case scenario. You know, we're pulling these comments down from the Zoom link and registration. As a support to that, we're also saying, hey, we want to have this meeting. We want to go forward with it on the 23rd. And those who show up to that meeting now become our avenue of comment, right? Where we pull comment from. And what we want to do is say, okay, let's have this written up where we'll say to address the lack of registration and comment, we'll say doing live stream, that we'll give whichever member of the public show up 90 seconds to make a comment, and we'll write that down. So logistically, this is what our agenda is. We're going to get live the member of the public or whomever show up on the 23rd.
3 minutes,
90 seconds. 3 minutes is we're gonna get out of
9
it.
seconds.
So 90 seconds to make a comment, and we'll declare whether we put it up on where we are, that we may not be able to answer every comment that night, but at least they get a chance to express the comment. And we address that the comment has been heard, and if we can, answer it, then we answer it. If not, give us a moment to get back, and you'll go to this website of this SharePoint to see our response to what we found out based on our investigation on it. So tonight, I think that's what we're trying to do. What are we logistically do we want it to look like? Not as much as the social site being set up and completed, right?
Yep.
So hold on, we got to get everybody, because I want to.
My comment's short. I just say we have a plan. Let's charge ahead and learn from our success and failures. If there's low turnout, then we know we did some things maybe not right. Maybe it's expression that things are going well. We'll just kick it in.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? What I
No,
because it sounds like we just kind of went right.
It did not. We did not. Trust me, it makes sense. It's just that now what we need to do is move forward in putting this in a form, and logistically. We need to, in other words, a program, right? For lack of a better word. We need to say that on our program on the 23rd, this is what we're going to do. If we're not going to be derailed because we didn't have a Zoom link set up in time. We're not going to be derailed because no one registered a comment That's not going to be the derailing factor. We're going to move forward and say Plan B, if you will. Plan B is on the 23rd, we're going forward with this listening session. If we have Joe Smith from JJJ, PCC, ABCD, EFG there, they get to make a comment on behalf of the public, and we will address that comment. That's what I think I'm saying, and you're saying to move forward, right?
In terms of a program, particularly if we only have a handful of people showing up, we could prepare our own 90-second introductions. Meet the PAB before we get started, go around the table, say who we are, why we're doing what we're doing, introduce our capable staff. And I'm just,
No,
off the cuff. I'm just thinking, we're using the time, we're making statements on the record, will still be recorded out there that we care about the issues. And then maybe that will draw people out. We just showed up with.
Roger that. I do want to make sure that both Rudy and Kate, because I think she put her hand down, although she still wants to make a point or not. So Kate, you go first, and then Rudy, you follow up.
Yeah, I just took a quick look at the comment form on the website, and I think it's a great form, but I think it's not super clear that that is how you would get heard at this listening session. So it might be worthwhile just to have on the website, we host periodic listening sessions. If you would like to participate in one, fill in this form, just to let people know that this is part of a whole process that we're doing. That might help. And I also totally agree with points that Alicia and others have made about reaching out to some of the groups, because this is new. We've never done it before. So a lot of people don't even know to look for it. So just getting out the word and specifically inviting some groups, I think, is a good way to get it going.
Absolutely. Rudy, still have your hand up, or is that?
Well, that was from before, but I do have a new thought after hearing Ken. And, if the listening session format is to change and we end up doing our introductions and how we're doing this work and so forth, and what our goals are, I think it might be beneficial to, express to, the public the issues that we are currently working on, and consider how that might draw in people who may be hesitant to come to this listening session. So for instance, to discuss our work around exploring how to remedy racial disparities in traffic enforcement, or exploring what more restorative responses to mental health crisis might look like, and so forth, and de-escalation, et cetera. So I would just posit that for the board to consider.
So it looks like we're getting somewhere then, right? We're moving somewhere. So one of the first things that we can do is, which is one of the things Alicia was saying, followed by Kate, is one, we can have a invite go out to some of these groups who've been attending our meetings, right? Just send out the general thing, hey, specifically, this is what we're doing, this is what this is. You have 90 seconds, right? Is that right? So that's the first thing. Secondly, then we need to say, so we can have a written program to follow, what it would look like that night. Of course, the general opening of the meeting, the general, things that we do over opening of our meetings, but, change it a little bit too, because we're not, voting on any amendment, unless we have to parliamentarian vote on reading of last week's minutes before that, anything like that. If we don't have to do that, we just set the agenda. First, send out a letter. We can have a monitor team send it out to those people who always meet at our meetings. And then at our program, we can say, hey, we'll open up the meeting. We do a invitation, or I should say a introduction. An introduction. Hey, we're the PAB, and this is the PAB, and we're a member of this line, and this is our thing, and we want to open up the meeting to you, the public, to hear from the public. You have 90 seconds. We may not get to everyone. If we can't hear you, we'll read your thought, or we'll read your comment and then address your comment. Because, we may have to say, maybe we allow 3 live people to speak, and then the rest we'll read for the sake of time, and something like that we can have in the program, and it goes out to everybody. Right? Right? So how do we do that, Terry? Do we have to make a motion for that type of thing to happen?
You have a list.
A list of what?
Well,
Yeah, so I have, the first thing is that you want an invite sent out to community organizations and others that could get the word out about the actual event. The second part is putting together a general agenda about how you're gonna plan that night, how it's gonna look. And then the third is you all just being prepared to do also like 90-second intros of yourself and why you're a part of this effort.
Yeah.
So that if you don't have enough comment, you could start with your alls and then have others. join.
I would suggest, regardless of how you keep that one. Because this is public facing, right? And the PAB's role is to be that entity that is creating the trust in the process with the public. So you want them to sort of hear that part. So I would suggest you keep that part and talk about what the PAB is and what you do.
Right.
And what your role is.
Right, it's part of the introduction.
Correct.
It's a part of the introduction.
I would suggest that you keep that regardless of how many people you have. And a lot of these concessions, really, people speak when you get there, more so than putting something online, because that's what a listening session is. You want people to come and they stand up or whatever,
Right.
and they say what they gotta say. And it's
Which falls back to how we advertise it, that we make sure that people understand that coming to this listening session, these are the, I guess for lack of a better term, these are the rules of the listening session. It's 90 seconds, you may not be able to respond to every comment, but we will get back to you, whether it's via on our website, whatever, you go back and see the answer to your comment if you can't get it to you that night. But it is a 90 seconds and there is no follow-up on your comment. So you can make a comment, but once we address it, you can't have a follow-up, because I'm hoping that we have enough people there, whether they're physically or online, to get to as many comments as we want. George?
A comment on the question. One comment is to, in addition to that, consider adding sort of the rules of open meetings altogether, of being respectful of that kind of decorum, just for the sake of the meeting and everyone being able to participate. The question is perhaps Barbara or Lindsay on technology. Has it been established already what kind of technology will be present, microphones, things like that?
So the gentleman who's helping us right now to do this, the live stream, we had a couple of meetings to try to get the logistics done.
Sure.
And he has agreed and committed to helping us out on that day.
Great.
With the sound. He's already gotten the names of the people to go to the rec center and talk to them and figure out the sound system, if any, of what he may need to support us for.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And I hate to add this in, but I'm just assuming that, but security features, because I've been to meetings that,
You mean the Zoom? Well, yeah, so Zoom, if you have the right account, allows you to keep the video off, keep the sound off of anyone until the admin takes them off.
Yeah, I'm not understanding.
so there is somebody who is going to be in charge of that. That did it with Mr. John.
Okay, so
Sorry if I'm on it. Did you say that you had some RSVPs for county council members to come to that listening session?
Yes.
Okay. Again, is this something that maybe give them 90 seconds as well to introduce themselves? They are public figures. Is that something we are or don't want?
They're gonna limit themselves to.
yeah,
Bring the gavel, sir.
Yeah, I like to bring the gavel. You can put that on me, right?
Well,
Okay, I'm gaveling the county
I
council.
like the gavel for that.
I would say that's a good idea, number one. There will be members of the public who may not necessarily understand the path, but they do understand who the elected officials are. And they may want to have questions of those elected officials, which may help you.
So then I guess the question would be then, where in the program would we put, introduction of county council member? Because we don't know who's coming yet,
Right,
it wouldn't be fair to put their names and they don't show up, as opposed to maybe in the program.
Guest introductions, perhaps.
Right.
Keep it on.
It counts in.
Right now, we have two, we have, that they will be there, Don, he and Sidney.
Okay, and if they,
And he's the chair of the public safety.
right, he's the chair and he puts it, yes, yeah, so if that's the case, if those two confirm, you can use those names, but I think keeping it open keeps it safe and we have them open. So again, it's just how we want that to look. So we have introductions, of course, we open the meeting, then we have introductions where the PAB is introducing, who we are and what we do, what our goal is. And then from there, the council can have their 90-second introduction of whatever it is in reference to that point. And then from there,
The floor is open.
the floor is open.
I hope they stay.
Right,
Tuned.
right, and the floor is open. from there.
Yeah.
Okay, and of course, the letter going out to various activists and organization groups. Chuck,
Speaking of letters going out, we're looking at how we report out, is that correct? So I'm getting emails from the county executive's office, from several council members, council committees that are taking place. How do we plug into that system?
So part of the plan is to get the graphic and flyer to all the regional services directors, so they can get it out to their people. Get it to also community partnerships, to the liaisons, they can get it to their communities, whether it's the big community, the African, community, Caribbean, whatever, Middle East, all of those communities, going through the liaisons to push that out. And get it to PIO to see if they will also do the first release on it.
Okay.
Statement.
But is there a way, so for an example, I can't tell you how many emails I have received about transportation locations that, they want to discuss the plan, or there's a ribbon cutting, or whatever the case is. There is a system that the county government has where they're pushing all of these emails out to everyone.
I think on some of those that I'm aware of, at least, maybe if I'm not in this, I can speak to this, but also requires community members to sign up to receive these notifications, to receive these.
you have to,
So I guess the question would be, in that case,
But they already updated it.
well, I'm not sure about the logistics in terms of that. What I'm gathering is whether the PAB can be one of those topics. Sort of, you want to know about transportation, you want to know about public safety, you want to know about police accountability board, for example. Could that be something added into that system that you're talking about? Right. So that anyone could sign up to it and receive constant communications if they so desire.
Well, we have that link on the website where you can subscribe.
Okay.
But again, people have to know about the PAB.
Yeah.
For them to go in and subscribe to the PAB to get updates about the PAB. And we're still building that. So the alternative is why we're going to these different entities. So, example, I get updates even from like the state police, because I've signed up since getting this position to get updates from state police just in case.
Right.
And I wouldn't get that if I hadn't, but the state police will not get our flyer to send it to their folks. The people who will do that will be those that are in the county. Their focus is community outreach, which is the regional services directors of community partnerships, OCP, those kind of groups. And then, of course, for some of us, having links into some of the grassroots organizations that have, including some of the ones that we've already talked about, and other organizations, local organizations, so I'm pushing through those in the hopes that, that will push them.
Okay, I guess, and let me, if I can reiterate, my question is that the county has a system already in place where you check the box for what you're interested in. How do we get included on that check the box?
I will check on that. I don't know if that happens or not. I do know.
I think you're talking about the same thing. So I think the check the box that you're looking for is what FETMATA has recently set up on the bottom of your webpage in all the different ways in which folks can connect. They have to subscribe, and one of the check boxes is for PAB news or PAB updates or information.
It's slightly different because it's a county system.
Yep.
So it's
I know what you're.
outside of the
so-
PAB
right.
website and everything.
Right, so there's.
Yeah,
a-
it is outside.
So,
Okay, fine.
yeah, so there's a county website to subscribe. And when you click on it, it has all these things that you can click on. You can have, you click
Yeah.
plus and it opens up. Council this, but these are departments, right? So I don't know if we're considered a department.
Yeah.
So these are like departmental places, and I'm not sure that we are a department, but I'll look into it to figure out if we are considered a department to be added in there. I mean, I don't know what the process is, so just so you know, nothing is.
Okay, understood.
All right, good question.
Thank you.
All right, so we can close this out, move to the next point. We have the agenda, I should say the programming, if you will, programming, I think is a better term in this case, for the 23rd. Introductions of the PAB, introduction of the county council members who will show up, and then from there, we're opening up the meeting to address and hear from the public. And the letter is going out to these entities who support our meetings and who even on tonight supporting the meeting. All right. So I think we can move on from there to the quarterly chiefs meeting format logistics. Is the next thing we want to address. I think basically that's really kind of the same thing that was what we just did, what that format would look like when the chiefs come. We again just want to give them again introduction and then have a series of questions like we did initially the first time we met with them, or is this a follow-up from that initial meeting? Then how do we want that logistically to look like?
If I may, I seem to remember the discussion came up that we thought maybe versus us having questions to the chief, chiefs may have questions for us at this point in time, if I remember correctly. And that we wanted to listen to what their concerns and thoughts are, which I think many of them may voice some of the opinions and thoughts of their officers. I did a ride along last weekend, and the officers, they had questions about who we are, what we're doing, and how we will affect their careers if a complaint comes before us from the public. So I think it'd be appropriate to talk to those points and ask the chief.
What district are you?
6 Gaithersburg,
Gaithersburg.
is it 6 or 5?
No, I think Gaithersburg is 5.
5.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You got it, and then police. I think this.
Yeah, just quickly on Greg's point here, with regards to sort of the logistics, I remember as well as you do, I think that the question about law enforcement agencies asking us questions, in a similar vein, they offered some feedback as well that I think was important in terms of the questions that we direct them. Doing that prior to the meeting like we did, but also being prepared to answer follow-up questions on the meeting itself, rather than repeating the questions that we had sent them. So I think that we could continue that or establish that moving forward. Whatever question we may have, sending that before our meeting to the chiefs and preparing ourselves to follow up on those questions. And I would suggest the same of the law enforcement agencies. If there are questions, that they send us questions so that we can prepare to answer them appropriately, with all the information that we may have. And again, with the purpose of having a discussion during our meeting instead of a.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So that's perfect. Right? I think that is perfect. So again, because that's that reciprocal relationship that we're trying to build. So again, we can send out, I'm assuming, a letter asking for those agencies to submit their comments or concerns that they have for the PAB, because what you got gathered from your ride along, for their officers and what they have for the PAB, to give us a chance to prepare, just as we want to send back follow-up questions or questions to them. So when they come in this reciprocal communicational, atmosphere, right? All right. So will the agenda then look like that we have the introduction? I mean, I should say the program look like that. We have the introduction. We have those who we want them to go first.
If I may,
Yes.
I know who they are, so they do not need to introduce themselves again.
We need the introduction.
We need to introduce ourselves, explain who we are, and then proceed into the conversational dialogue with their questions to us first, I think would be appropriate. And then make it a conversational process and not necessarily direct it to the same question to each individual officer. Right.
I had two things that I wanted to say. One of which is, in the interest of really having working sessions with the chiefs and really covering some turf and getting things done, might we possibly consider meeting with smaller groups, sections of chiefs, like not meeting with a widespread gathering of all of the chiefs, and then expecting to come back with so much rich discussion and exchange. I think that we'll get a lot more out of a number of meetings with smaller gatherings, you know what I'm saying? Instead of a huge gathering of all the chiefs. And that's why it went the way it went thusly, that we fielded the same question for various chiefs and they were answering one after the other. Terrific, but I didn't feel like we really get to dig in and get some exchange and dialogue going.
If I may, I hear what you're saying, but I think for this one, should have all of you guys in.
All right,
And
but
then
I'm saying,
afterwards-
can we?
I think that's still a good thought. Moving forward,
After that,
as we progress and continue to mature in who we are and what we're doing, we can begin to have those small sessions.
so
Maybe target a certain district, this time, and certain district next time, and a certain district next time, so forth and so on, right?
If I may comment on that, I think, well, first, with regards to like the first meeting, I would agree with you. There was a lot of back and forth that was probably unnecessary.
Not unnecessary, I think it was very valuable, all of it. It's just that.
Well, I'm saying they, we had answered questions, we would have asked questions that they answered, and we sort of went through that again. So I think that in this case, if we were to do that, we would probably have a little more in-depth conversation, which I think would address your point. With regards to the smaller meetings, I think that that's a good idea, but I do think that it would be dependent on perhaps the questions that we would have and whether the questions are particular to a specific law enforcement agency or not. But otherwise, I think to Greg's point, it would be good to have all of them. Again, since most of the questions will be kind of higher level, I would assume. The only other thing I would say briefly is that on the introduction piece, I think they know us and we know them to a certain extent, but this is a public meeting. And we also will be receiving perhaps, designees from specific chiefs that may need to be introduced because they're representing their law enforcement agency. So I think that we can make it ideally briefer, perhaps even introductions, and then get to the meat of the conversation.
Right, so that's what the programming look like this, since we're talking about logistics now, for the 30th of March, we're talking about the 30th. is the program would look like, again, the opening call to order of the meeting, and introductions. I guess we should introduce ourselves first this time, the PAB, and then followed by either the chiefs or representatives of the chiefs, whoever their reps are, doing their quick intros, and then we move into the meat of the meeting, which is whatever questions that they sent to the PAB, we can answer first, and then do our answers, and, you know, the board and chair, co-chair, can recognize each board member that want to address that certain question that they had. You know, each person, each of the board members would field a certain question that came in from the chiefs, right? And then once we're finished and we have that brief dialogue, then we could then go and the questions that we would have for them, to give them a chance to respond. So that's how we wanted to look on the programming. Is that,
Did we capture their responses? We captured. a
We
good
got-
portion.
The ones that they emailed to us ahead of the meeting, we have those. We do not have those in which we did not specifically ask for them to send them to us. So like they responded to you during the meeting, right? But we don't
Yes, I
have
remember.
the, right. So like we don't have all agencies' responses to your questions from your December 1st.
The reason I asked that is because George raised a good point. Why don't we have follow-up questions, not repeating the same questions? We run the risk of doing that if we aren't following up on the questions.
no,
that we gave.
absolutely. And I think that some questions will come from the 23rd meeting after we listen to some of the comments of I think that would help us have some real good questions to the chiefs on the 30th, because that's what we're here for, the listening session. So we want to hear what they're saying, and we want to be able to take those comments and concerns from the public back to the chiefs, right? And send them out, of course, and let those be, you know, the questions, and then have those addressed in that meeting as well.
And how about the final, our report, our annual report? Would it make sense for us to perhaps ask about, you know, what their thoughts are about our recommendation?
I got a question, does that go
Or
to
no?
you? Did we get that? Because it went to me.
It's cutting, counsel.
Council,
Yeah.
did it go
But it's
to?
public.
But did-
It's public, but like, did it go to them? I'd have to look back to see who all
Kind of
got
less
it,
than the
but
wind if it didn't go to the.
Yeah, because my thoughts are, the council and the county executive, they got to review it. If it, I'm just asking a question, if it did not filter directly to the chiefs, did they necessarily review it?
Should we send, see what I'm saying? See where I'm going with that?
No, it's not, sure.
Was it not, did we not make our annual report recommendations regarding Maryland, Montgomery County policing? Yeah,
So,
did
So,
we,
I-
did we or did?
so obviously I was.
No, I'm asking if I'm sorry if I'm not. You understand what I'm saying? We made our annual reports and we made it regarding our findings based on our research of what for particular areas of improvement we saw, we envisioned for Montgomery County policing. So what I'm saying is, does it make sense to forward that to them? Does it, or if you decide not, that's fine.
But comment, I thought, if this report is for the county council and county executive, we cannot arbitrarily forward it, I believe, to the chiefs as such. That would be something that council and chiefs would have to forward. I mean, council and county executive. That's why.
I'm just asking.
Well, I think I get what you're saying. I think, obviously, you know, the report is meant, the audience for the report is primarily, I think, the county council and the county executive, but it is public document, right? And these are the recommendations that we're making, like you said, across the board, for whoever wants to listen. But I think in terms of your concern, if there is a question as it relates to the recommendations that we made, that you want to pose to the law enforcement agencies, I think that could be part of that agenda, that discussion.
I'm just wondering what your thoughts are.
Yeah, that would be part of it. We could just make that, as far as, but I don't think it should be, I don't think we necessarily have to make an extra effort to sending it out to them,
Got it.
because we did our part, which was addressing it to the council. It is what we were mandated as far as legislation say to do, right? But it's still a good question for you to have, so on the 30th, if you want to pose that, we can pose that from that perspective, just to get their response to it. That-
Well, one other very quickly, because we are, I think as we prepare to think about the questions, as before, it would be important for us to have established a deadline by which we want to send those questions so that, everyone is prepared. The same goes for, I think, the law enforcement agencies, that, we need some time to review what questions they would have.
Because we're putting me already on the.
So if this is, technically 3 weeks away at this point.
Yeah,
So I would, my suggestion.
give us a suggestion,
Yeah.
hey, George.
My suggestion would be, I don't know, what did we do last time? Was it a week or 2 weeks advance?
Maybe you've been 1.5, let's say, probably 2 weeks, but.
So could we say, I mean, this would be before the public listening session, but I think that we could take questions to that meeting from the public listening sessions regardless. But I wonder if, for example, by the 20th, which is a Monday, we could have questions prepared to send to law enforcement agencies. That would give them 2 weeks to read and provide any answers, and I would say the same for them.
And how are we doing this through SharePoint? How are we drafting? We're doing this?
Yeah, I think that works.
Yeah, but I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel.
Just do through SharePoint. I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah, just,
So we're not going back and forth over email. I'm like, oh my God, there's another email. Like, you know.
All right, so,
Yeah, try changes on sure.
all right, so the 20th is the deadline, so that's the first thing, right? To get the question, to get them back or to send them out.
Send them out.
And so to send them out, and then what to get them back for the 30th. So, right, because we have to give people a chance to respond, right? So,
I think, well, I mean, if I'm thinking about this correctly, if I'm sending them a question by the 20th, we're requesting a response before the meeting.
okay,
So
that's
so
what
that we can have that conversation in there. It may not be that we have a back and forth, like, an answer and a question and an answer and a question, but it initiates the conversation, at least in my.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I think we got that. So,
Temperature is like.
yeah, it is, all right, so we have that. So again, that's what it would look like with the intro, with the beginning of the meeting, the intros of the PAB, then the PAB, intro of the council members, doing their intro or introductions. And then after that, we move right into, the questioning from maybe the chiefs to us. And then we field those questions that came in that were sent out on the 20th, or that they sent to us by the 20th. We field those questions, and after that, then they're fielding our questions. Some of them could be questions that we came up with from the 23rd public listening session to them, which I think is a good way to reach into.
Confirming that I understand a part about the PAB asking the chiefs what questions they have ahead of time. So as an example, are Fatmata and I emailing the chiefs, let's just say tomorrow, saying the PAB has requested any questions from the chiefs you may have of the PAB to be submitted to us by March 20th?
That would be my motion, yes.
Okay, and then separately, when you all collect your questions to the chiefs, you're going to have them completed by the 20th.
Yeah.
Send them out on the 20th, and then you're going to request that they have it back to you by the 27th, so that you have time to review it ahead of the 30th, or
That's
you want
fine.
them to bring it to you on the 30th? Because I think that's where you got the concern of basic regurgitation
Right.
of some answers where you couldn't do your follow-up.
Yeah, I think that's.
You won't know how to do your follow-up if you don't see the answers to their questions ahead of the 30th.
I agree.
Yeah,
So
I think that's good.
so we need to pick a date. Is it I know you threw the 27th out there, is that?
That's a full week, so I think that's good.
That's a full week.
It's a Monday to a Monday.
Right, so let's do that, yes. Right? Okay.
And the request is for all responses to come back to you. So like you will then have all responses versus last time we got responses at the meeting.
Right.
Right? You want them written back to us
Ideally.
by the 27th.
Yes.
You know, they got a lot of things on their plate.
Right, yes.
They got a lot of things on their plate.
Right, okay, so we have the 20th and the 27th. Okay,
So if I may ask, is that what George is putting into a motion?
yeah, he's about to put that into a motion now.
Okay, I second.
Well, let's let him make the motion.
Well,
first.
I'll make this brief because in the interest of time, to submit questions from the PAB to the law enforcement agencies by March 20th and receive questions from the agencies by March 20th, as well as responses to our questions by the 27th. I hope that was not too confusing.
No, second.
Okay?
Yes, you took it second.
Yes, okay.
Thirded.
She took it second.
Saw that.
All right, all those in agreement with that motion? All those, can I see hands? We got hands online. Any other thoughts on it? Any nays? The ayes have it. All right, so we're done with that. Okay, the next thing, I know we got, oh my God, how long we have for this room? Lindsay?
They close at 9, so
Okay, all right.
we should.
So
Chop, chop.
let's go move on to the review of the ELE for a briefing.
I have one
All right.
comment on that. This is
Okay.
the only thing I'll have today.
Very quickly, you guys, oh, you can do that by email, I guess, figure that out.
The standing meetings for the chiefs, because this, you know.
Oh, no, that's, you're right. No, let's not skip this.
Oh, wait a minute,
Yeah.
did I skip that?
Yeah.
Way of the best day of the week.
To have a standing meeting for the chiefs that we can send to them so that they can.
I think it's obvious that Thursdays work for most of us,
Yeah,
but which Thursday, I guess is the question.
I have to kind of decline for the Thursday because I'm in
Okay.
2 other organizations. I've not been able to get to those meetings because of PAB meetings on Thursday. So I hate to have to do that.
Well, it's one
They
meeting,
Thursday too, but.
one meeting a quarter, right?
Yes.
So,
Every 3 months.
yeah, so you don't think no?
No, okay. Well,
Yeah, it's one.
if we're
meeting a
stuck on
quarter.
Thursday.
We're
Well,
not
Friday.
stuck on Thursday, but it's one meeting a quarter, so I
It's
think.
one
yeah.
meeting a quarter, it's just that, I'm in both the PAB and the HCC.
Right, you are.
And I have Wednesdays and Thursdays,
Gotcha.
Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then I have my organization,
Right.
which I have
Well, I defer to yours.
Tuesdays and, then my prep is on Friday. And then-
Yeah, you're back full.
Greatest constraint.
Yeah, I would suggest keep it Thursday, it's
Thursday.
one Thursday a quarter for the chiefs.
I think
We
that would
just
be
kind of
easier
word the
for me.
quarter we want to do it.
That would be easier for me if we can keep it
I defer
on
to
the
you.
Thursday, since it's one, quarter. We changed the other days, it's,
Would it make sense to just say that it would be the last Thursday of the last month of the quarter? So for example, because you're meeting the last Thursday of March,
Mhm.
you'll do the last Thursday of June,
June.
the last Thursday of September, and then
Yes.
December.
That
Yes.
makes sense.
can we agree, can we agree to that? Do we need to make a motion?
We'll make a motion, yes.
Alright.
So we'll make a motion to establish the last Thursday of the last month in the quarter as the standing meeting date for our quarterly chiefs meeting.
Second.
All right, she's second, she is quick on the draw. All those in agreement with that? I see those on hand online.
Well,
Any,
We do understand that that means that may throw off your you might have a
may
back-to-back
have
meeting
to, yeah.
because of that.
and that's,
Just like what's happening.
yeah, like
This
just like last time too.
Yeah, okay.
but again, it's only one a quarter, so
Yep, just,
I can do that.
okay.
That I can do. We do any other days and then you guys will, it's, oof. So no nays, the ayes have it, right? And thank you, Fat Model.
Yes, thank you.
I didn't
That's a great
Yeah,
Yes.
just skip that. Thank you so much.
Can we also, around this conversation where we talked about you saying you wanted like smaller separate meetings with individualized either municipalities or just MCPD or whatever the case may be. Are you all saying that you want to have more meetings? Because otherwise you're never going to connect.
I think that's just gonna
But isn't
depend.
doesn't that qualify? It'll just be, well, will that not qualify? Does the quarterly meetings require us meeting with the?
No, so
Right.
the legislation calls for quarterly meetings with law enforcement agencies. So not all on, so you can do the next quarter, you do 3 of them, the next quarter, you do another 4, the next quarter, you do.
Yeah, that's why I think it'll depend
So
on
you
the
can
questions that we
probably
have.
do it, you can probably get away with doing like that. Because then you
That makes
met
sense.
with law enforcement agencies, because it says more than one law enforcement agency. I don't remember exactly what it says. So yeah, so you can meet.
I would always venture to say what would most likely happen, was a thought. Our chief of Montgomery County, he would almost be available every quarter, and then maybe 1 or 2 from the other agencies. Only based upon size, since the MCD chief has the largest coverage, that every quarter. And then from the other jurisdictions, maybe a Gaithersburg, Rockville, or Chevy Chase, or something like that in the other time periods, or maybe a Park Police and Chevy Chase.
I think that may be like another agenda item on a future meeting in
Yeah.
terms of understanding kind of what the logistics will be.
For thought process.
Yeah.
As we process.
Right, and I just want to flag, there's nothing prohibiting us from inviting a particular body to a regular meeting
Yep.
as needed,
Yep.
as wanted, as desired.
Yeah, that's true too, which will, of course, be in compliance with that legislation of meeting. So we have agreed that it's one.
Last Thursday of last
Thursday,
quarter
which is
month,
one.
Mhm.
Not changing the day.
June, September, or December.
All right, okay, and then we can address how we can be in compliance with legislation about meeting with the law enforcement agencies, which will again address the good point that Alicia made about not having to be all of them. So, all right, good on that. So do we have time to move in? Yes, we do. To review the ELE4A. And thank you for starting. with
Yeah,
that.
just again, in the interest of time, I think the debrief what we got was, I think, very informative. And I again appreciate the team there for their efforts in conducting this report and sharing it with us. One thing that I wanted to highlight here is that something that was out of the scope of the audit was understanding complaints over time. That was not part of their analysis. And I think it should be part of the PAB's analysis. And there's a couple of reasons why. One is, of course, understanding complaints over time is, I think, one of the mandates of the PAB in terms of understanding trends for complaints. And I think that that's important. I don't think we need to wait for complaints to accumulate as they will, or they are currently, but also we can backtrack, we can check on the trends that have been, coming our way. So with that, I would say Tacoma Park, for example, includes in their website a sort of summary of complaints by year, aggregated. So there's not, publicly identifiable information. That might be sensitive. It's aggregated information that I think we could make good use of in terms of number of complaints, the ethnicities of folks that submitted the complaints, and again, complaints as they relate to members of the public submitting these complaints for the PAB. So based on that, I'd like to request of all of the agencies a record of complaints that includes from members of the public submitting the complaint, the resolution of the complaint, so that it would include the discipline imposed, as well as any demographics that they can share with us. Correct, ethnicity, the race of the complainant, the race of the officer, if that's available, again, in aggregate form, so that this information we could use to identify trends across agencies and Montgomery County as a whole.
And how far back do you want to
3
go?
years would be my ideal suggestion. And go from there.
Is that a motion?
That's open to discussion before I make a motion.
Yes,
Without supporting or not, I didn't participate in those briefings. Chris and I are working on a letter which is in good shape. Of course, in our opinion, about inquiring about the complaint process. So this might be since the same subject, might be a reasonable tag along that we put that in there. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that, Ken. I think that's a good idea.
So I might need a little help with the drafting and substance since I wasn't part of those other discussions. But
Sure,
just
happy to.
shoot me an email.
So just for clarity, we'd rather have that there instead of having staff reach out to chiefs and request this.
No, I think, yeah. I think so. My request is that we reach out as the PAB to get this information from law enforcement agencies. But I think that if the letter is complementary to that, that's totally fine. But my request is that we formally ask for this information via the institution.
But also to confirm, you're saying that Tacoma Park is an example of what has already been given. So if others are like, I'm not sure exactly what you want, you're saying Tacoma Park has given you what you want already?
This is public. Yeah, Tacoma Park has this information on their website.
Yes,
And
it's giving you exactly what you want.
it's given me not exactly because they also include information on complaints issued by police officers, members that are not considered non-members of the public. That is not the purview of the PAB. But yes, to your point, overall, they do have the number of complaints, the complaints that were resolved, and the discipline that was imposed, and in some cases, the ethnicity of the folks involved. But the Tacoma Park database or the examples they have is a guiding example, but I'm requesting as accurate and consistent information as possible as it relates to number of complaints, the resolution of those complaints, and demographics involving the complaints and the officers.
so I want to make sure I'm tracking because I understand the context, but I want to make sure that I'm tracking on how we're getting that information. Again, Ken and Chris intended that they could take part of that and make it a part of their letter. And then this is the letter that we as the PAB will communicate to the agencies, or we want to
No.
give that.
So I think from my perspective, because this is something that I would ask of all law enforcement agencies as part of the questions that I would like to ask them. So I think that that could be something that Fatmata and Lindsay can help with reaching out to law enforcement agencies with this information. I'm assuming it will take time, depending on what the records are, what they can share. So I'm proposing going that route.
Okay, I'm tracking it. So
Primarily.
So Fatmata and Lindsay, Fatmata staff and all can do that on that part. And then your letter that you and Chris are working on is what we've already,
Correct.
which is a different, okay, all right, thank you. I wasn't, okay.
Any other
Any other,
discussion thoughts?
Yeah,
Chris?
I just wanted to say for I guess for your reference, Montgomery County Police Department is already required to do much of that already under the law. So I think it might be helpful to refer to what they're required to disclose to kind of maybe guide what we ask of the other agencies, just for help and for ease of the process.
Sure.
So is that a motion then?
Rudy.
You want to?
Yeah.
Oh, what's the hand?
Rudy has-
Rudy, sorry.
Yeah,
thank-
one thing to say, and this also relates to the upcoming meeting with the law enforcement agencies, but this is about de-escalation policy. So I was reading that the Maryland Police Accountability Act required every law enforcement agency to have a formal written de-escalation policy, and I would like to ask MCPD where they're currently at in that process.
They did.
I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
They gave us their de-escalation policy in our first meeting with them, but I think our concern is it's not much of a policy. So
Right. Just especially considering how use of force increased against vulnerable populations, I think it's a really imperative thing to raise for the next meeting.
Okay,
So what's the?
so then let's make,
I think I don't know, Rudy, I guess from your part, would that be something to ask in like as part of the 3/20 deadline, part of those questions to follow up on the de-escalation policy?
Yes.
okay, got it. All right, so Rudy's point is something to follow up on for the 20th deadline for the,
Part of this question. Yeah.
right, part of discussion for the 30th. Right, okay.
I'll make the motion on my request. I'll make a motion to request from all of the law enforcement agencies under the PAB purview to request the number or complaints, a record of the complaints submitted in the last 3 years. That includes, to the extent possible by law, the members of the public, that narrows on the members of the public submitting complaints, and that includes resolution of those complaints as well as demographics of the folks involved in aggregate form.
Demographics of officers and the.
Yeah, whatever they have.
Anybody want a second?
I'll
second.
These two. All in agreement with the motion from our parliamentarian? Any nays? The ayes have it on that motion. Are there any other comments or any other views on this E4A? I get that thing, so.
ELE4.
Yeah. No other comments on that?
yeah, I just wanted to say the one thing I thought that one of the most glaring parts of the briefing to me was that the early warning intervention system is not much of a system that's in place. They rely on the memory of the supervisors to track complaints against officers. So that's something I would like to follow up also in the future on, just to make sure that's an actual system that's documented, tracked, and accountable not just to a supervisor, but to higher up on the chain of command, so that there's kind of more of a system in place for that.
Will you please include that in our question draft and SharePoint for the.
Sure.
All right, okay. It's to new business. I think the new business agenda is something that we've already really kind of addressed, looking at it. I say at this point, I would like to make a motion to table the discussion about Councilmember Wando's step active. I don't know if.
Did we want to support it? Did we want to, that was.
I have some questions. I think we want to talk about it before we get started. Make support on that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My thought process is.
And this is, I'm sorry, new business, if I didn't make it clear, I'm sorry.
Okay, the thought process is, when I did my write on, I had some very enlightening comments from my officer that I went along with. And this was from an officer that had been with the police force less than 5 years, college graduate. And he voiced concerns about understanding the items that one is put in about traffic stops and those various types of things. And he made some valid concerns, not that he didn't agree, he agreed with looking at the stops, but I think there should be some concern or questions he had from the perspective of oftentimes when they do certain types of traffic stops for expired car registrations, where you see the tags, that should not be go past that, because oftentimes when they make those stops, they find individuals that have other laws they have broken and that are fugitives. Oftentimes they're driving with suspended licenses and there are other warrants on them. And the reason that cars oftentimes are not registered is because they cannot registered themselves. Oftentimes they will not have insurance and those type things. So we may want to just have it vetted, put some caveats in certain areas where officers may have valid concern. That's all I'm saying, and just talk.
And I think we certainly want to hear from the officers, but we cannot deny the LLO data. I don't know, I'm just responding. We can't deny Alifa's, their own race audit data. We cannot deny that, and he can't honestly not have seen, or hope, well, maybe he hasn't. But perhaps if he looks at that data and the concerns regarding use of force and what the data is showing and how it's disproportionately impacting persons of color, and in particular vulnerable populations. So he, you know, I hear what he's saying, but we are trying to save lives. For example, I'm still traumatized, I am, by Robert White's death. I'm sorry. I'm traumatized by Harry Nichols' death. I'm traumatized by a young man who was killed in Gaithersburg at the McDonald's. Those things, I really am. When I say I'm traumatized, I have real nervous anxiety when I'm in public and there's a police car. I'm sorry, I just do.
Well, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that, what I'm saying though. And I can understand it from an officer's perspective, and I've bounced it off some people and I've bounced it off other members of the community. And I can understand if you see something that is blatantly incorrect, a license issue that is completely expired, they should be able to stop the individual and inquire. It's a fact. And I'm not saying that you're going to arbitrarily just stop people. I'm saying if there's a blatant issue, you're riding along. If you're not a fugitive, what have you, oh, I forgot, I'm going to take care of it. But there are individuals that you often will stop like that. He's telling me they do not have a registration because they cannot get a registration because they have other criminal issues involved. Suspended licenses, no insurance, type things. So I'm saying we should talk with Councilman Jawanda about being more definitive and just make it a blanket process. That's all I'm saying.
I agree with that, hearing from Councilman Jawanda.
Yeah, and I've given thought to that. I'm sorry, thank you.
No, sure.
I've given thought to that. And I'm curious as to what statistics they have on.
Exactly.
Because if they say, yeah, well, 12% of the stops we make normally leads to something else, why are you subjecting the other 88% of people?
I don't disagree, and I'm just putting it on the table. It was a comment. I'm not defending one way or the other, but I can see the validity of if I'm driving down the highway and my registration on my vehicle is 2 months past registration. I'm just telling you.
No, I mean, you know, because again, there's so many mitigating circumstances and stuff like that. I can recall my son, I bought his vehicle, he's driving his vehicle. I know everything's legitimate. But he don't even know where it happened. But wherever he was parked visiting, somebody actually stole his sticker off his tag.
Exactly.
Who checks their sticker every time they get in their car, right? So he's driving and, you know, this was a sheriff, you know, pulled him over. This was in Frederick, pulled him over. And my son don't know why. I'm not speeding. I didn't run any lights. So now, of course, he's nervous and right away he's calling me. But, you know, this guy pulled me over. I wasn't speeding, wasn't anything. He walks up to the car and informs him, you know, your tags are dead. I said, tags aren't dead. Here's my registration right here. But now this sheriff begins to proceed into this investigation, which is, you know, you got anything in this car you worry about? You got any weapons in this car? You got any drugs in this car? Where you coming from? This, that, and the other. Now trying to make a innocent, because actually he's a victim.
Right.
Actually, my son is a victim of theft because they stole the sticker off his plate. So, you know, they get heated and peel it off there, right? So actually he's a victim now, but now he's being turned into this potential culprit.
Absolutely.
So, you know, it's a fine line.
It's fine, and that's why I said I should talk about it, because But, and what his officer explained to me, he says, we check and someone says this happened, it's easy, okay, that's off and gone. But you're talking about the other, I'm just saying.
Well,
it's something
because I,
that's-
you know, again, you know, we only just going by, you know, just my history of that is he didn't just let my son do that, even though my son showed him the registration, that the registration is valid, because on your registration, it lets you know if you're taxed.
That's another issue.
You know, and he's sitting there reading it, but yet he still proceeded with this so-called investigation.
That's a different issue, but I said, that's one issue of it, but I'm saying, just in general though, you didn't know the registration wasn't there. He didn't know it. You probably would have known it if you drove the car next week.
But who has the gun? That's the point. And we're trying to preserve life. We're trying to
Yes, we
save
are.
lives.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree on that.
That's what changes everything.
No, but that is correct. What I'm saying is, at face value, it should be discussed more. We should ask the councilman. It's a discussion. I understand what we're saying and I agree 100%, but at the same time, if you're driving and no one knows these things, it has to be addressed. You could drive for months, you be out of state driving, and then it's a whole different issue. That's all I'm saying. It's something that should be discussed.
So when you say discuss, are you making a request that we ask for Councilman Rwanda to come?
Yes, and just talk about it. It's an issue that has come up, and I'm telling you what I heard where the officers are understanding that. And it's a question in their minds.
And with that said, I just wanted to make sure then what, you know, because everything we do, we have to have a target or a goal, right?
Yeah.
So what, in frame of that request to have him come, what is the end goal for the PAB? Are we looking into that to write another brief and what we suggest, what our finding is based on? What would be the goal?
I believe the goal from my perspective is, it's a legitimate concern. We're saying, I'm telling you, they're looking at the PAB. Because if the PAB gets an officer that comes before them that stops someone, and there's a complaint because they stopped them just to check, and there was nothing else they did but just stop them and say, what's going to happen when they come before the PAB board, or a complaint in the council? Because they did not follow.
Well, it won't come before the PAB, it'll come before the ACC.
ACC, but I'm just saying, it's a question, discussion, is that within our purview, because we're here to be even from the citizens' perspective and from the officer's perspective. Is that not correct?
Yeah. And that's a question.
Well,
And-
I want to answer that because I have a different answer to that, but you had your hand up first, George, and then you were following Chuck, and then I want to answer to that question about the establishment or creation of the PAB, in my perspective of what that is, but
I was just, I guess.
we have, it's 9:04, they haven't announced it yet, so we're still good.
To-
But everybody has to get home, I'm sure.
To further sort of the discussion, I guess, what I'm hearing is the need for more information, right? For an ability and our ability to discuss the bill and concerns that members of the PAB may have or members of the public may have. Would it be, I guess what I'm asking is worth communicating with the office of Councilmember Joanna to ask, to invite him to a meeting, to ask about this, to establish in some kind of way a forum for us to be able to communicate, you know, our ideas and thoughts and his ideas and thoughts. Is that the best way forward?
I think so. I'm just putting on.
No, you're great, you make a good point. What we want to do is we want to show the validity of your point, but where do we move from here? Because we want to have an objective, you know, to make the point even more valid, right? We don't want to just wash over. Chuck, I'm sorry.
And I will say, I'm going to put my personal feelings aside. The question that I had when I first thought about this, when we'll put this out, as the PAB, as the board, are we subjected to take a neutral position on this so that we don't side one way or the other? That's the
I
question.
see, are we prohibited from supporting the bill? Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
I think that comes to the individual member.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Me individually, I would support the bill, but as a PAB board, you know,
Well, and that's helpful to
does
know.
it come out to say, you know,
That one.
Chuck Williams, member of the PAB board, says that he's for it, you know, and then what fallback does that
I see.
So,
cause?
so as the pattern can decide whether you would support legislation or not, and indicate comments on the legislations that are proposed. To the extent that you can push for, and you can recommend your own to the county executive and, you know, council and say, you should probably think about putting this into effect. So that's the big role that the PAB has. Your focus is on policy and legislation. It's a major role.
Yeah, we can speak out about legislation.
You can. As an individual, obviously, yes, to my, you know, you have your individual voice. So long as you're not saying, I am Bishop Walker,
Right.
as chair of
Yeah, right.
the secondary board, I am supporting or
And that's
I
my
am
motion to
against.
majority vote.
Right, exactly, that's right. We're not individually speaking on behalf of the PAB on your own personal.
Right,
This, as a PAB, we speak as an entity, as
Right.
one voice, saying based on our discussion, determination, and then motion and agreement, we would speak to this point, or we, whatever that bill would be.
right, and you can do that with individual bills, and you can look at a situation
Rudy has a
and
question.
think,
Yeah, I see, you
you
know,
know, and make recommendations.
and then we get time, but, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you answered the question.
Oh, okay, all right. Rudy, I see your hand is up again.
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back to a point Alicia was making, you know, about saving lives, and also thinking about Greg's point. And I'm thinking, you know, for minor violations such as these, I would propose an amendment to the bill to create a voucher program, because these kind of issues, you know, often, you know, linked to issues of class. But to create a voucher program with a particular amount of funds and then a timeline for someone, you know, a deadline for someone to draw from that voucher in order to pay, you know, whatever fines relative to that minor violation. So I just wanted to put that out on the floor for consideration. You know, we can discuss it at, you know, another meeting, but if we are to take a position on this bill, I would want to propose that amendment.
Okay, so I wanna,
I know I'm right.
we tired, but doesn't mean that you don't have a right to say what you wanted to say, so.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. I think that, and the young man's name I meant to remember was Ryan LaRue. Kwame Nkrumah. The names they come back pretty easily. That these young men often are under the age of 26. And if we're aware of the American MAA's findings that the frontal, if I'm saying this correctly, prefrontal lobe of the brain is not fully formed until the age of 26. And that was your decision-making area of the brain. They are not in the best position. Many of them don't have both parents in the home who would raise them as to how to speak to authority. So that these moments when they're pulled over by officers can go from 0 to 100 pretty fast. Because the young man who is stopped doesn't really know how to properly move and not appear furtive and not, and take off, literally take off. And then there goes the life.
And I think that what we wanna do from here, then from this topic is then decide on what we wanna do from here. Do we wanna make a request to Councilman Mwando to come sit before us to make this an agenda discussion, and then from there, go back into our deliberations on whether or not this is some type of amendment or addressing to that piece of legislation from the PAB's view with how our public feels and what we derive from that. Is that?
Yes, I would like,
I
would like to
think
hear from.
Yeah, since he,
I think it would be very worthwhile, at least having that discussion with the council.
okay, all right, so then I think that's a motion. So Greg, you wanna make that?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that the PAB had Councilperson Wanda to come in and speak to his bill. And let's discuss some points, if there could be caveats addressing things around stopping or not stopping individuals.
I second.
All right, we have a second. All those in agreement with that request for presence of Councilman Wando in this, the STEP Act bill? I see. All right, all right, any nays? All right, the ayes have it for that request.
So when do you want him to attend?
Yeah, I was best with the next question.
It's possible his availability we can ask, but would it not be correct?
So question is, do you want it to be a regular scheduled meeting or are you calling for a meeting?
Well, please, I will have to say, we're gonna schedule meetings.
I think just be a one session meeting, maybe. I would think.
Well, I mean.
But it's gonna have to go into April. basically.
Oh,
That's what
I'm
we're
sorry.
asking, right?
I apologize.
Yeah, so, yes, yeah,
Yeah,
April,
yeah,
April.
yeah.
Okay.
And, but I would like to say, I think that in my opinion, there was a question that came up, from Greg in reference to the actual purpose of the creation of the PAB, and the ACC. And in my mind, I think, from what I understand, it wasn't so much as, getting views from both sides, but I think it was a creation because of so many loss of lives of Black and brown citizens. Was one of the reasons that these laws were created and established for an entity like this to be created. So I think we need to understand that that is our agenda, to address these type of disparities and inequities, and even over policing in these certain Black and brown communities. We can't be afraid to understand that that is one of the founding principles of the creation of the PAB, while at the same time we are independent and we have this autonomy where we're not being swayed one way or the other. Right, that's what I wanted to say that, and, you know, I don't know if anybody wanted to follow up on that, but that was.
Yes, thank you.
That's a very good point, and that's why when I heard this, I said it needs to be addressed and at least talked about.
Roger that.
Because we're supposed to be right here, holding individuals accountable, making sure the citizens are treated appropriately, but at the same time, if they come before us, we're not going to discount and treat them badly. It will be make sure they're following the letter of the law.
Did we say we're looking for April? I see that, look at my calendar, is the public hearing for his bill is on the 19th of June. How appropriate.
I was preparing for Jawanda's bill.
Right, so we have time, maybe, okay.
Okay.
So we do that. All right, so I think we made the motion done with that. And if we look at 7 and 8 on the agenda, I think we've already adequately addressed those issues. And does the PAB agree with that? I think it's the public listening thing. We talked about that and established the program. We talked about and agreed that it's the White Oak Community Recreation Center. The quarterly chiefs meeting, we've established that idea, what we're doing with that. And if all are in agreement that we've covered those points, I would like, all in agreement, I would like to make a very strong, energetic, I think Rudy's hand is still up from the last time though. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, Bishop, I don't know why it's appearing that way. On my screen, it doesn't, but yeah, disregard that.
Okay, all right. I would like to make a very strong, energetic motion to adjourn. Second, all in agreement to adjourn? Any nays? The ayes have it, we are adjourned.
All right.
Good night, people.
Good
night.
Thank you for all our visitors. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
All of them.
I think we want to make sure that's okay.